This was a slide I was working with today. They were asking us to map our cognitive processes. How do we make decisions? He said, this retired general officer was saying, yeah, it's a good idea that if you just sit down and map your processes. And so I shared with him the one that I've already done, and which I have shared with you guys before. Oops, this was me just kind of showing off in class today, since I had already done the work. So this is a picture of how my brain works. That in the middle bracket is a routine process I go through all the time where I think about the problem or opportunity and I remember the purpose I'm trying to support. What am I trying to achieve? Where is the risk? What is the specific problem frame? What's a method that can solve that kind of a problem? What kinds of solutions start to emerge? And every one of those is provisional because I'm always going to revise and update. I never accept certainty on my solutions. I am an iterative engineer in that sense. And even more importantly, as I start thinking about solutions and start to implement them, I am looking to capture insights, decisions, perform actions with excellence, and then make continuous assessment, realizing that as time flows, change will happen and performance is measured and consequences occur. When I drill down out of this general process into specific supporting tools, these are all pieces of professional knowledge that are used to help me create this process up here. This isn't going one level down into my toolkit, if you will. Like when I'm talking military stuff, I'm always looking to improve the capacities of organizations to perform and to accomplish missions and to turn them into learning organizations that develop people and to help them develop systems. And I'm always ready, working on readiness for the current fight. And then if I expand one level up, I always take a look at the world around me as a ecosystem, an environment in which there are actors, forces, structures, and context, and I'm just one of them. So I always have that ecosystem or an operating environment that's beyond my control, but which is influencing me. And those environmental factors are coming into the semi-permeable membrane. And so this is an open system in that sense, but this is my general problem-solving model. When I'm evaluating other problems and opportunities, I always go through this model, and no matter where I start, because of circumstances, I always revisit every one of these at some point to make sure that I've done a complete circumnavigation of the problem or the opportunity. The area of operations are the specific things in the direct and immediate environment underneath my control or within arm's reach to sort of figure out what's going on. And then the larger ecosystem, the area of interest, maps those other things that come from higher headquarters or forces beyond my direct control, but which have influence on me. So this combination of two layers of environmental observation, area of operations and area of interest, shapes the broad context in which I'm going to be acting. Then in the motivation area, I'm looking at the reasons why, which are often emotional or purposeful or based on values. What is my motivation to act? And what is my motivation not to act? So that I am very clear about what the emotional and values-based drivers are. And then when I'm conducting analysis, I'm trying to use mental models, figure out cause and effect, looking at strengths and weaknesses of various structures and actors and processes in play. Where can I get leverage? How does it scale? What values are enforced that are going to help me make a decision from that analysis? I consider resources, which includes time, but I keep a separate view of time, not just as a resource of what I have available, but am considering what time frames I'm acting in and what are the risks and what resources do I have. And from that, I can start shaping these courses of action, and each course of action describes a method of action that a sequence of activities that answers the question who, what, when, where, why, and how. Each course of action considers risk and risk management, command and control, and the effect of resourcing and prioritization. And then from that, I can make a decision on how to proceed. Which course of action am I going to adopt after I've considered the range of probabilities and the amount of certainty about how each course of action could unfold. And I start thinking about, from this environment with that problem and seizing that opportunity, what are the good outcomes that can happen and the best outcomes, and what are the worst things that can happen, risks and consequences. And I try to think about the probability distribution from best to worst and all points in between. And then collectively, I use that model to help me decide which course of action I'm going to put into play. I won't go through this one, but in great detail, but when you start mapping the military mind, as you start getting into more and more complex operations, you have to do a little more decomposition first into pieces and parts before you then reassemble into a course of action. And then this just tracks that next layer of engineering decomposition on the mental cognitive processes of military professionals. As we start from before we even receive the mission, we think about what's going on in history and from our experience, and then we receive a mission that we then analyze in a certain way and come up with a problem statement that we're trying to solve. And then we use design thinking to come up with some tentative rapid courses of action, which we then settle on into a generalized operational approach about how to proceed, which we turn into much more specific guidance for rational planning models. And then before we ship it, we think about how history, leadership, strategy, tactics, sustainment, logistics, and force management, change management, how all of our knowledge from those domains can influence the way we perform the functions. And then inside the commander's brain, or inside the decision maker's brain, we go through processes that begin with beliefs, observations, impressions about the world, to an itemization of facts, assumptions, and conclusions that we draw, the beginning of analytical efforts where we form hypotheses and investigate to gather more information, determine the criteria for judgment, that we're going to use to evaluate the results of our actions, and then we update our Bayesian priors so that we have a revised estimate of what's going on in the world. And this is always knowledge in action with provisional confidence based on evidence. And so it's a dynamic, iterative process of learning about the organization, learning about the environment, learning about the opponent. And then this is a map of the military mind in action. And then this one is an impressionistic painting, which shows the effect of time compression on the kinds of thinking that we can do. When we are not under time compression and when we're just floating around out here in space, we're using a combination of unconstrained creative thinking, and we're trying to develop those ideas. At the same time, we are sharpening our critical thinking skills. And then when we receive a mission, and we start trying to shape that mission into the creative and critical thinking, we engage in a slightly more constrained process of design thinking to start trying to put pencil to paper to develop ideas on how to proceed. And then that turns into paradigmatic thinking, in which we apply templates from our particular professional process to start conforming to standard planning norms once we've shaped out the broad design thinking outline. Then as we start getting into time compression and we're getting close to executing, we have to stop this all of these other good ideas and get into reactive thinking and training and battle drill and finding the first good satisficing solution so that we can violently execute a pretty good plan. And then if we survive contact, hopefully our design thinking and rigorous paradigmatic thinking put us into a place where our battle drills will cause us to succeed. And then as we succeed, we start getting more and more time because we've accomplished missions and we've started to shape the battlefield in our favor, or we're in tune with the market. We've gotten through the critical state, and then we can relax and start going back into planning norms, looking for the next patterns. That may lead to more design thinking or even more relaxed creative thinking and critical thinking. And so when we're working with the staff or with the team, there's always somebody who is doing creative thinking for us because that's their specialty. And there are guys that are specializing in critical thinking because that's what they do for us. And then there are operators who are performing these standard tasks to a very high standard and using command and control and error-free execution in search of operational excellence and delivering solutions to standard. And then the design thinking guys are the ones that are always trying to find that harmonious space between critical and creative thinking. So this was some of the work that I was doing today with the executives out there and trying to help them understand what innovative value creation looks like in the wild, in the world, not just with military professionals, but with traders and designers too. So I just wanted to share that with you while we're waiting for the um, reports to open.